I am very pleased to be here today. I want to thank the organizer for inviting me to the final conference to the HNV-Link project. And I have to admit that the place and the topic are very dear to me. First of all, the place. I have happy memories of my studies I have done here in IAM Montpellier 30 years ago. I discovered the photo of my class here in front in the entrance hall. And on the topic, I also have to tell you that I've been born and grow up in an area which is recognized today as the largest contiguous semi-natural extensive HNV farming in Europe, which is located in Romania in the Carpathians. So I am from that area. At the moment when I grow up, I never heard words like HNV farming system, but I was surrounded by very diverse rural realities, and I have to tell you the wildlife was very common to me. I mean, sometimes when I tell people that I was meeting often large carnivores as a child, I mean, I used to meet bears and wolves sometimes and lynx, and I was not afraid of them. And we managed to live together with them and to accept them reciprocally. Sometimes, if you don't get into conflict with them, nothing happens. So, well, now we are only too aware of what we have been losing, and now we have to act to try to preserve and restore this precious natural heritage. I mean, it has been said before me, you know, the HNV farming system may take many forms and vary greatly throughout Europe. And at the European Union level, we have tried over the years to build up a increased range of tools to preserve and protect and restore HNV farming systems and to contribute to the EU biodiversity strategy and to meet the targets we have set at the EU level. So I am trying today to introduce you the new CAP proposal the Commission has adopted and how this CAP proposal can contribute to support the HNV farming system in the EU. Of course, I already got some flashes about what the new CAP does not do or do, and I'm trying to clarify many of these elements, because I think many of these elements are there and will stay there, but we put forward a new method, a new proposal, which has a different philosophy, a different approach behind, and I'm trying to explain you this approach, and then I will try to explain that the different roles, the different actors should play in the future in the new CAP to achieve the objectives we fix in this policy. But let's first have a quick look to what we have now in the current Common Agriculture Policy, because this will understand a little bit why we have something today and why we do not have in the proposal something, or you do not see in the proposal something which you see today. So first of all, I told you that over time we have developed a number of policy instruments in the CAP. And these were both in the first pillar and in the second pillar of the Common Agriculture Policy, if you are familiar with the structure of the policy. And first of all, we do not have specifically designed instruments for HNV as such. And this is because we have such a diverse situations of HNV in Europe that we could not even design a single instrument, but we have several schemes that can contribute, and they are used by the member states to protect HNV in the countries, in the regions. So the first instrument, which is very wide, but it has an indirect contribution, is direct payments under the first pillar, whose aim, of course, is to support farmers' income, but it is conditional upon fulfilling a number of conditions and standards, what we call the cross-compliance. Then we have introduced in this period a ban of conversion of environmentally sensitive permanent grassland. Much of this is likely to be an HNV farming system in farming area. And all member states have defined area of ESPG within Natura 2000 zones. So therefore, this HNV is protected. so the conversion, so they cannot convert it. But there are some member states and some regions, they may have defined also area of ESPGs outside Natura 2000. Therefore, outside Natura 2000 there is also protected areas. But as my colleague Humberto already mentioned, most of the elements you find them in the second pillar, which is the Rural Development Program. And here we have a range of instruments which contributes to the protection of HNV system in different ways. First of all, the most known and the most recognized, and I think I never heard anybody contesting or having, let's say, a negative view about the instruments we developing under the rural development for contributing to the protection of HNV system. So we have the environment and climate measures, which are supporting multi-annual commitment for beneficial management practices, going beyond the mandatory requirements, which I mentioned for the direct support, so they go on top. We have the Natura 2000 payments, which are compensating farmers in these sites for fulfilling the management obligation imposed by the management prescription in these sites. We have non-productive investments, and they support environmental beneficial investments. So they are not commercial, they are not for competitiveness, but they are for let's say, non-productive purposes. And of course, we have the payments, the compensatory payments in area facing natural and other specific constraints. And the farming system are often characterized of these regions by low intensity, extensive activities, and HNV is present very much in this area. So I can give you examples from the programs, but I will skip this because I think I will not have enough time. But I think if you go on our site, you can find this. So I told you that over the time we have changed and adapted these instruments. I give you an example of some issues we have faced with HNV farming system related to the eligibility condition for direct payments. So sometimes we have requirements that made that the ecologically rich and biodiverse land have not been eligible for direct support. And this is because we have very detailed prescription in our legislation. For instance, due to the presence of a number of trees, scrubs, and bushes, and there was a fixed threshold there. So if you go above this threshold, you become ineligible. So they've been taken out. Or we do not have a predominant vegetation, for instance, herbaceous vegetations. So we have corrected over the time some of this. I mean, to tell you, in this period, in 2013 CAP reform, we have extended the eligibility for direct payments to land with shrubs and trees, which can be grazed, even if grass was not predominant, to parcel with less than 100 scattered trees per hectare. So I'm coming from a region where many of the land, which is very characteristic because they have trees, they were not eligible. And we introduced a pro rata system as a simple alternative to calculate the eligible area. We have further amended this, if you may have heard about the omnibus regulation, where we have brought additional clarity of these eligibilities, and also we have also allowed under certain conditions member states not only to support shrubs, and to support also shrubs and trees that produce animal feed, but not directly grazed by animals. So, but under provided that grazes remain predominant in this area. This is very important for some of the HNV system like the HESA in Spain and other Mediterranean HNV systems. But let me now move quickly to the new proposal. So as you know, the Commission has adopted a CAP reform proposal on the 1st of June last year. This is in the co-decision now. And we have introduced completely new elements. And sometimes these new elements may give this reaction, like Fabrice mentioned, or some question from the room came, that you will not find an HNV mention in the proposal. And I will explain you why. Because we have proposed a completely different way of formulating and designing the policy on the ground. And this is why. It is not our intention to remove everything that we achieved so far, but is to keep everything and build on this, but give a lot more possibilities and flexibilities to the member states, to the regions, to the actors involved, to define specific elements to their own realities. I mean, the policy on one size fits all we had in the CAP policy so far proved to have a lot of difficulties to accommodate to many concrete situations in the field. Not only us in Brussels, but member states, but you. We've been confronted many times with situations where we try to integrate a specific situation which was very beneficial into a very fixed framework we have in the EU, at the EU level, in the EU legislation, and sometimes this proved not to be possible. Like I give you the example of 100, or the number of trees per hectares. So there are new key elements in this policy. I'm going to go very quickly through it, and then I'm going to emphasize the elements in this new proposal which are very relevant for HNV farming system. So the first substantial change is a new business, new delivery model. So we propose to our member states to work in a different way. We propose to move to a performance-based policy to achieve something and not only to check that we spend the money according to the legislation and we pay them and without taking into account what we achieve. So therefore we have a different split of responsibilities between EU and the member states. So at the EU we only keep the necessary elements to maintain the commonality of the common agriculture policy. So we fix EU-specific objectives which are for everybody. We have 9 specific objectives. We fix a set of common indicators, and then I will come back about some question about why HNV index is no longer there, and broad type of interventions. This is elements we fix at the EU level. Then we let the member states to identify the needs and to design their own CAP plan. And what is for the first time we propose to put all the elements of the CAP under a single strategic plan. We have the first pillar, second pillar, the first pillar with direct support and the market intervention, and the second pillar well together. And we want to have a strategic approach and to take into account and have greater synergies and complementarities and avoid overlappings. Then the member states, they can tailor the intervention to their needs. They can select the most appropriate tools to reach the objectives, and they should fix quantified targets. And these targets, they will be used in monitoring the achievement and the progress towards the results they propose to achieve. And then they have to implement this, and we have to monitor and to see that what has been agreed in terms of targets, in terms of objectives, and in terms of intervention, they go in the right direction and we achieve what we have proposed to achieve. So, central element of our proposal is a higher ambition for environment and climate. How we are supposed to achieve this? So first of all, we want to start from what we have now and to build up on this. So we have introduced a no backslide clause. So we don't want any member state to go below what we have today. We have to build up on this. And out of the 9 specific objectives, we propose 3 objectives which are dedicated to environment and climate. And precisely one is on biodiversity, ecosystem, and landscape, the third one. We have one on climate change actions for mitigation, adaptation, and renewable energy, and one for enhancing and sustainable management of natural resources, especially the water, soil, and air. As Humberto mentioned already, there is another 2 important elements which guarantee this high level of ambition is that non-agricultural legislation should be considered in developing the CAP plan, all the legislation related to environment and climate, and all the planning instruments we have in the other legislation should be considered for preparing the CAP plan, and involvement of other administration and all the actors, because we continue with the principle of partnership with the stakeholders. And there is another element which I will not forget to mention, that we continue to have a ring fencing of the EFRD budget of 30% of the budget to be allocated to the climate and environment actions, and this does not include the area with natural constraints. So I give you here a very brief presentation of the new approach, and I want to point out that this policy is going to be more focused, so more targeted, and is going to be result-driven, and we have a revised toolbox, and we have to ensure greater synergies. And I put here, this is very important for your project, is a knowledge base and based on innovation and use of modern technologies. We consider that this should play a substantial role for the future. Very quickly on the new green architecture, what we have and what we propose. So we have in mind, because we get a very, very strong request for all our stakeholders and member states' need for simplification. So we propose a new architecture which is based on 2 layers, basically, a mandatory and a voluntary one, which follow what we had in the past, but we try to merge the mandatory one, and we created a new enhanced conditionality where elements of the current greening, they've been integrated in this new enhanced conditionality, and some of them, they are very, very important for the HNV farming system. And we have the voluntary part for the farmers. Also, absolutely new element is the eco scheme, which we introduced in the first pillar, and Humberto already mentioned about this, and this is also a big opportunity for the HNV farming systems. And I will explain you a little bit what is the difference with the agro-environment climate voluntary commitments, which we have under the second pillar. And you know, we have to provide, and we have a commitment to provide very strong knowledge transfer, innovation, support the farmers through the farm advisory services, which is now integrated in agriculture knowledge and innovation system. As regards the, something wrong in my presentation here, as regards the first pillar and the enhanced conditionality, I have to give you some elements, so because this comes to the question why we don't see the HNV mentioned in the regulation. You don't see many things in the new proposal, because we propose a totally different approach. We propose to move out of this one-size-fits-all. We propose that many elements are designed by the member states and not in the EU legislation. This has to be fixed according to the needs assessment, to the SWOT by the member states. So therefore, you will not find not only the HNV, but you will not find many, many other, I mean, just an element that comes out in the co-decision, the role of women. You will not find precisely as such, but we do not want to exclude any of these elements from the CAP. So as regards the definition of agricultural land, we propose in our new proposal to allow a better recognition of HNV system, and we do this by adapting the definition of agricultural lands, which keeps the essential element that we have today. So nothing that we have today, when we have amended through different regulation, I mentioned omnibus, will be removed. They will stay there. The basic definition of permanent grasslands is aimed at maintaining the current situation. But there is more leeway to use option and eligibility criteria for agricultural land. No intention to specify additional rules at the EU level, for example, the 100 trees. So let's go to some of the changes we told you. I told you that we have some enhanced conditionality, and some of these elements, they are very important for the HNV. So we have new elements in the conditionality, and for instance, we want to protect the carbon-rich soils, the wetland and peatland. We have introduced the Water Framework Directive and sustainable use of pesticide, but we also propose to offer to the farmers a tool, a nutrient tool, which should be a win-win situation for economic and environmental purposes. And we want to strengthen some elements that will support the HNV, for instance, formal ecological focus area to be productive free, and we also have introduced a ban of conversion of permanent grassland in the Natura 2000. And all these elements will be defined by the member state based on a SWOT, and they will put this in the CAP plan, and the Commission will scrutinize and approve the CAP plan, and will make sure that the level of ambition, it is increased, and every member state follow this. And of course, the approval of the CAP plan guarantees the level playing field, the guarantees that we still maintain a common policy. So one of the novelty, I have 2 more slides and then I will finish, is the eco scheme, and this is the most important for the HNV. So we have introduced this possibility. It's a voluntary possibility for the farmers is a mandatory for the member states. What is the difference with the agro-environmental and climate measures under the second pillar? First of all, it is annual. So the farmers, they can test it, and they should not be afraid of entering into a long-time commitment with something which they don't know. It is fully financed. It is not co-financed. And it has the possibility either to top up something they are already obliged to do under the conditionality. For instance, they have an obligation of maintaining the landscape element, and if they can increase the percentage of some scale elements, they can get a top-up payment. Or they can get compensation for additional cost or income forgone. Both cases, they should be compatible with WTO green box rules. And the member states, they will have a flexibility and the possibility to introduce incentive elements. Second pillar will maintain all the possibilities and commitments, so there are different kinds of commitments. Again, you will not see all the elements we have now, because we don't want to specify, to be very prescriptive. So we will have the general management commitments for agro-environment, climate commitments. You will have the payments to compensate the constraints, being them natural or legal. I'm talking about the Water Framework Directive. Or support for investment, but we have, and I didn't mention in the current policy, we have a lot of other elements that contribute directly to the HNV farming system, like knowledge transfer, like EIP, like investments and we also listed kind of negative list of unsuitable eligibility for irrigation and forestry. Here I have an example. This example has been developed in a roundtable, in 2 roundtables that DG Agri developed with UICN meetings. I know that some of you participating in this meeting are here, and that you participated in these roundtables. I know that you are critical of some of the elements of the Commission proposal, and that does not mean that your presence there endorsed our proposal. But this is a very good example developed by the people working on the ground and looking to the reality how the different elements of the new Common Agricultural Policy can build together a higher ambition in a CAP strategic plan for the future and deliver. And this is an example on grassland, support sustainable grassland and HNV. And my last word will be to you, because you are working on a research project, but you will try to influence decision makers. And I think it is very important to realize that for the design of the policy, for the proper implementation of the policy, we gave a lot more role and under the subsidiarity to the member states and to the actors. So it is for you to input now the conclusions you draw for your project in the preparation of the CAP strategic plan, and to influence that all these elements, which are not specified one by one in the legislation, should be taken into account in the future CAP plan.